Hello. Before we get right into part 12 of the Chris Watts interrogation review, the comments section of part 11 made me want to add one more nugget to the end of the subject of the mistress's involvement, because she kind of falls into the category with Chris's parents of even if she is the most sociopathic, manipulative, vile woman on earth, even if she had been saying, Chris, I will never speak to you again unless you murder your family. Here is every step you need to take and every lie you need to tell. And after you get away with it, I will do whatever you want for as long as you want. It's still the responsibility of the mentally, emotionally healthy grown man to say, are you out of your mind? Of course, I'm not going to do that. What's wrong with you? Are you a complete idiot? And you must think I'm as stupid as you to agree to something like that. Only a worthless sack of worm food with a vacuum for a skull would agree to murder their family for a mistress, is what a man would say. But anyway, Chris Watts, we're getting into a new section of the interrogation. And if you thought the pathological lies of Chris were awkward and nonsensical, now we're getting into the compulsive lies. And they completely undercut the pathological lies. For example, him admitting to the affair. That's a nugget of truth, but he is burying it in a nest of compulsive lies to try to make himself still seem like the good guy here. And he's trying to say that the reason he failed the polygraph is because of the affair. That's what I was holding back yesterday. And now that he's admitted to that, remember how smug he was when he denied the affair the night before with just Graham? He denied it for minutes, and that was the peak of his smugness, was when he was denying the affair. He was like, no, no, no. Now, Thrive helped me. I was 225, now I'm down to 185. And Graham's like, yeah, that's great, Chris. But anyway, back to your missing family. Oh, yeah, my missing family. He was that smug and denying for minutes. So now that he's admitting he was lying, how can we believe anything else he says? He completely undercutted his credibility by admitting to this. I think that's kind of why people get drawn into this case is you go through lie, 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 lie. Wait, that's true. More about that. And then it moves on, lie, 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 lie. Wait, I want to see more about this truth. So then you try to look into more to find out what's the deal with that truth that was tucked away in there. And people have asked in the comments a couple times about how, why do you believe this and not that? Like, why do you believe the prison interview? Why do you believe letters from Christopher? And it's not that I believe the whole account. I just am finding these little needles of truth in the haystack of lies. So here's one needle from the prison interview. Here's one needle from the letters from Christopher. Oh, these two needles line up. This makes sense now. So that's what I'm mentioning when I say that this is true and this is why we know this. Because I'm finding the needles of truth in the haystacks of lies. So, since Chris is now undercutting and contradicting himself with his compulsive lies, he's kind of turning into like a malfunctioning robot where these conflicting messages are going into his brain and he's like starting more than ever. And the big example of that comes up is when Graham says, this is very good, Chris, keep going, about the affair. And Chris says, I cheated on her. I feel horrible for it. She was pregnant, and it didn't hurt her. I cheated on her. I hurt her emotionally. So what you have there is like three conflicting messages in his brain, all trying to come out of his voice at the same time. On the one hand, he's trying to get the approval of Graham and Tammy before he can leave. He needs them to think he's a good guy, so he's trying to give them what they want so that they will approve of him. He's still trying to protect his good guy status by not admitting just how scummy he really is with all the details. And he's still trying to stick to his original cover-up story all at the same time. So what we have is these kind of blanks that he leaves when he realizes he's starting to reveal too much. and I will be happy to fill in the blanks for him. For example, this blank, I cheated on her. I feel horrible for it. She was pregnant, and I don't want to. So the thing that he doesn't want to say is that it was great. Cheating on her when she was pregnant was great. He loved it. He got so much perverse joy out of doing that, out of degrading someone who loves and trusts him. He knows the difference between good and bad and right and wrong. We can see that from the night before when he gives the example of an altruistic relationship. I'd like to think that if we were thinking about cheating, we would tell each other before it happened. So he knows what a good relationship is supposed to be. And that's what he pretends to be. And he gets perverse joy out of doing the opposite of that. And even more joy out of convincing everyone that he is the good example of a husband and father, and while also being the bad version. But all of these different messages are colliding with each other in his brain during this part. So, amidst all this, he does come up with the most successful example of the Chris Watts rule, where he replies in the negative and the opposite is true. The most people seem to have fallen for this example right here. It's where they ask him to keep going on about the mistress, and he ends up saying, I don't want to get her involved. Something like this, I don't want to drag her name through the mud. He does want to get her involved. Now, more than ever, after she dumped him and isn't responding to him and is giving him the cold shoulder, more than ever, he wants to get her involved. And we've seen that ever since he finally admitted that he killed his entire family and Shanann had nothing to do with it. Now he's going to the mistress as his scapegoat. He will blame whoever is convenient to blame. And the reason I know people have believed this, I don't want to get her involved, because so many people have said, I can't believe he would protect the mistress but throw his wife under the bus. He is the kind of slimeball who would do that, so it's believable. But I think if she had a single fingertip of involvement in physically committing the crime, he would be letting everyone know about it, because all he has left to go by are these nebulous statements with no real information in them. Of now in the letters from Christopher Book, he'll say her and her friends were into some really dark things, and she would make a drink for me where I don't even know what it was, but I think she was hypnotizing me with it. I think she had total control. And in the prison interview later on, he would say, she had me on a leash and she tugged me away. Like he's just completely helpless and under everyone else's control and had nothing to do with the crime. He will blame whoever is convenient to blame for his own actions. And if she had anything to do with it, it's part of the reason why I believe she wouldn't get her hands dirty too, is that if she did get her hands dirty, Chris would have let us know about it by now. All he can make is these flimsy accusations that she had such an influence on him, because that's all he really has to go on. So, if she had anything to do with it, he would have blamed her, and also her not having anything to do with it, and her giving him the cold shoulder, dumping him and ignoring him at this part of the interrogation, I think that took the wind out of his sails, and he would have had the resilience to muscle through this and maybe even get out of it and get a lawyer. And who knows, if he got the right lawyer and the prosecution was weak, he could have made it through, gotten innocent, got away with it. And the mistress dumping him was a big reason for that. So he has been funneled into this situation where he feels like he has no other choice but to confess to something to get his narcissistic supply that he's not getting anymore, like a junkie who needs his fix. So that's Graham and Tammy are working well on that too. They work great together. They're not interrupting. They're not disagreeing with each other. They notice each other's nonverbal cues and Chris's nonverbal cues. And instead of interrupting and disagreeing, like, no, that's not it, Chris. This is what we're really talking about now. They will wait for the other to finish, and then they will say their piece, which will play on what the other said. And this works great to funnel Chris into this corner where he feels he has no other choice but to confess to something. However, he doesn't confess everything yet to Graham and Tammy because he feels like he's not going to get the narcissistic supply fix that he's after from them because his dad is still in the other room, and he knows that his family hates Shanann. Based on all accounts, they hate Shanann, and he wants to tell his dad instead. And this is actually as close as Chris comes in this whole interrogation of actually walking out and just leaving without confessing, is when he says, "Can I talk to my dad out there? I've been in here for 6 hours. Can I just talk to him out there?" So he's been reduced to what he reduced his victims to, his kids. He's been reduced to a scared, confused, helpless kid who just wants the comfort of his dad to come in and make everything better and tell him everything's going to be okay. And the only justice in the world I can see is if his dad came in the interrogation room and strangled him. But then someone would have had to strangle the dad, and then someone would have had to strangle that guy. So maybe Gandhi and Shanann's family had it right by voting against the death penalty for Chris. But that would have been satisfying if his dad came in and strangled him at the lowest point of his life. But his dad comes in, and it actually works out because I think his dad is also a compliant character and is going along with how the detectives prepped him to go into there. Chris wants to tell you, so go in there. He's ready to tell you, and his dad comes in, and you can see his dad kind of leads Chris to confessing by saying, "Is there anything else you want to tell me? Is there anything else going on that you want to tell me?" And I think he did that because the detectives spent about 10 to 20 minutes prepping him on what he should say to Chris to get Chris to talk. And to sum it up, we'll probably get into more of Chris's news story in the next video. But to sum it up, Chris's dad comes in and the detectives leaves, and it's just Chris and his dad in the interrogation room. Chris says, "So, polygraph, failed it." And his dad immediately says, "Too much emotion." And then it ends with, "Well, we'll get a lawyer and see what he can do." And I can't help but wonder how many times this type of a conversation has happened in the past. "So, Daddy, it's the neighborhood cat. Strangled it. Oh, it was feral? Well, we'll get ourselves a shovel and see what we can do. So, Dad, it's the truck you let me borrow. Red stain in the back. Spilled some paint? Well, we'll get ourselves to a detailer and see what he can do. Polygraph, failed it. Too much emotion? Well, we'll get ourselves a lawyer and see what he can do." There's just such a big chunk of Chris's life that's hidden by delusions. We can't believe anything that his parents say about Chris's childhood because in everything I've seen of them publicly, they're just delusional about him and the crime he committed. So I can't believe anything they say about his childhood and being a perfect kid who never rebelled, like that's important. And there's that huge missing chunk of his life between 18 and 25, between his parents and Shanann. Any unsolved mysteries in the area where he lived? Someone might want to look into that. We don't really know what was going on there. It's just hard to see him being so confident in this crime with nothing having happened in the past. He came into this crime with a lot of confidence. And for the amount of details that went into this, the amount of steps, the amount of lies that he had to keep track of, it's hard to believe this would be his first one. So, Chris has finally confessed, and he's no longer free to leave. The moment we've all been waiting for. And I think it's all thanks to Chris just being like a junkie who needed that narcissistic fix. He needed someone's approval, and he had been funneled into this desperate situation where he couldn't get it from his family anymore because he killed them. He couldn't get it from the mistress anymore because she dumped him because she saw on the news that Shanann was pregnant, and the mistress could no longer deny that she knew Shanann was pregnant. And this was her excuse to finally dump him and just free herself from that responsibility and move on to something else. And that took the wind out of Chris's sails. I think he would have had the resilience to make it through this interrogation and take his chances in court if he knew he had at all times the mistress to fall back on when it was all over. But he has nothing to fall back on. And he's tried to admit it to Graham and Tammy, but saw he wasn't going to get the supply he needed. He's looking directly in his dad's eyes the whole time he's confessing, but then when he sees his dad give him kind of a disappointing reaction, like, oh, good God Almighty, son, that's when Chris looks away and he can't meet his dad's eyes anymore. And because he didn't get the response he was looking for. So he's finally confessed to murder, is no longer free to leave, and he still hasn't gotten that fix. So he is just a beaten man at this time, and I think that's all thanks to the mistress dumping him and taking the wind out of his sails. Therefore, the final unsung hero of this case is Nico. Chris and Shanann's unborn baby, Nico. And you might be saying, Mike, what in the ever-loving world would a baby in the womb do to thwart a murderer? And the answer to that is the only thing an unborn baby in the womb can do, and that is survive. Nico was the first murder attempt of Chris in this whole crime. If you remember, he admitted in the letters from Christopher, one of the needles of truth in the haystack of lies that makes sense and lines up with reality, is that he gave Shanann the oxy to make her miscarry at least twice. Probably more than that, but he's only admitted to doing it twice. And Shanann, of course, by many accounts, was really sick both times that he gave her the oxy to make her miscarry. So Nico's survival does get a lot of assistance from Shanann, her friends and family, who all encouraged her to eat and drink water, and they helped her through her sick times, during which Chris was being really cold to her, by the way. And Nico did the only thing he could do. He didn't just roll over and die like Chris did to commit the crime, settling for the lowest common denominator of murdering his family instead of surviving like a man, and like Nico surviving in the womb, his father's murder attempt. Thanks to him surviving, that gave the mistress the excuse that she needed to dump him, which took the wind out of his sails, which led to him desperate to do anything to get that narcissistic fix of someone to believe that he did the right thing, so that everything that he's been doing for years has been the right thing to do, which led to him admitting to murder, which led to him leaving this interrogation in handcuffs. And all of that is because Nico survived his father's attempted murder. Nico is a hero. And thanks to the heroics of Nico, Celeste, and Bella, we get to see the best part of the interrogation. It's so good. Chris realizing. And I swear I didn't set it up this way, but it just happens that part 13 is going to be the best part of the interrogation. And it just so happens that the 13th of August is the day that Chris ruined everything. And now in part 13, we're going to go over him realizing that he ruined everything. And I can't wait. Good job, Nico. Good job, Celeste. And good job, Bella. I'll see you in part 13.